Yes, excited, excited. I'm excited to be here. My name is Brendan Dunne. For those of you who don't know me, I am the head of sneakers at Complex based in New York. Happy to be out here in Hong Kong for the second time in a row. Always a pleasure. My job at Complex is to stay informed about everything that's happening in sneakers now. One of the exciting things about the job is that we use the past to inform what we know about what's happening now, and then we use that knowledge to inform about what's happening in sneakers in the future. And one of the exciting things about this talk is we have some people who can help us bridge the past to the present to the future through collaboration specifically. The first person I want to bring out is Jeff Staple, the founder of Staple. Jeff, can you come on out here for us? How are we feeling, Jeff?
Good.
Also joining us today, we have Cornelius, the maniacal genius, the founder of Zellerfeld, the 3D printed sneaker company. Before we start, have we all been by the booth yet? Have we been by the Zellerfeld Staple booth?
Yeah.
I hope so. If not, run out real quick and enjoy the booth, then come right back here.
No, don't run out.
If you couldn't tell by now, the thing that we're all wearing on our feet is the creation that these gentlemen have put together for this weekend. Jeff,
Yes.
Cornelius, how did we get here in this 3D printed piece of footwear?
We were just saying backstage how Cornelius and I originally met. It was a couple of years ago at this thing called NFT NYC, when NFTs were a thing a couple of years ago.
What is that? Vaguely familiar.
And in a full circle moment, it was actually Zellerfeld had done a collaboration with Ambush and Verbal, and Verbal was there, and Yoon was just speaking, so it was cool to meet Verbal. Verbal introduced me to Cornelius, and it was the first time that I met this crazy guy.
Yeah, and back then, however, the big difference was everybody was excited for those shoes, but there were actually only 3 pairs, because back in the day we couldn't produce more. So the times have changed. Now on the booth you see so many different pairs. Everybody can wear a pair of printed shoes.
Yeah.
And we will see that more and more as printed shoes will get on every foot.
Cornelius, how many hours did it take to print a shoe back then?
I think back then it was like 200 hours.
Yeah,
so like
200 hours.
Almost a week for one shoe. Which was also Yoon and Verbal were very excited to actually launch those, but that was basically impossible. So over the last 3 years when we first met, we were just like really heads down focused on engineering to figure this out. So now we are from 200 hours to 20 hours. We want to get to maybe 2 hours at some point. Because at the end of the day, we believe the shoes are already great. They will get even better. Like with 3D printing, shoes are way more like software, so very fast iteration cycles. So we definitely believe that's the biggest change in footwear.
I'm so excited again about this conversation because I feel like it does so much to bridge the history that you have built, Jeff, in the collaborative sneaker space over the past 20 plus years and bring us into the future with what Cornelius is doing with Zellerfeld, his 3D printed sneaker company, and what collaboration and what sneaker production in general might look like in the future. And I feel like you both come from different eras of this thing where you know the way sneaker collaborations used to work, and you only know this new paradigm you're trying to create. And I feel like that's such an interesting dynamic between the two of you.
Yeah, that's probably one of the big reasons why I wanted to collaborate with Zellerfeld, because just like you said, taking the old and the new, you know what I mean? Like if you're like an old school basket weaver or like some sort of traditional art, like a dip dyer or something, it'd be cool to learn like the latest innovation and technique of that. But I do know that some people want to stay in the traditional sense of things, but I'm always one to like sort of iterate on something new. I mean, we just made fun of the NFT community and Web3, but it's cool to dabble in stuff. You know, what's the worst that can happen?
Do you have any respect for tradition, or you just want to kill off all the sneaker brands that exist?
What a layup. I fully believe there needs to be a force that question things And I believe in footwear right now there aren't many people questioning traditional things, and Zellerfeld wants to be that. Like I love that when I look in our all the people that we are at Zellerfeld. We are engineers, like we are software developers, we are hardware developers, we are material scientists, and we actually all never thought we would make shoes.
See, that's the thing I want to know. Is anybody a shoemaker?
No. And that's the best thing.
So how hard is that? Like how do you know
He's proud of that.
what the like endpoints of a shoe are, what the boundaries of a shoe are?
So to me, that's the best thing, because at the end of the day, we have to, with all the tools that are available today, we are questioning, or like we are asking ourselves, how would the shoe world look like? How would the shoe industry look like if we had to rebuild it today? Without any strings to the past. And this is why I love when I go every morning to Zellerfeld. There are software engineers, the best in the world, thinking about what does it take to make a shoe fit. And when you go to Adidas, for example, or like some other brands, like when they think about how to make a shoe fit, they go into a last library in a basement. They have like millions of different lasts, wooden lasts from like that were made when people were still working the fields, plowing the fields. Feet are completely different these days, and this is what excites me about like really just questioning everything. And I believe there needs to be that force, and that force is Zellerfeld.
You know what's interesting though? So 100% agree with everything he says.
No, you're a bit of a traditionalist.
Yes.
You still have the tradition at heart.
100%.
You're not ready to destroy like he is.
No, but what's really funny is when Cornelius and I we have dinners and have meals, I'll say what I think is like the most kindergarten remedial idea ever. Like, and it'll just blow Cornelius. He's like
what's an example?
Genius. Like, oh, we should here's an example. I was like, oh, we'll do this colorway for ComplexCon, but then the black one, let's make that like exclusively for 21 Mercer. What? Yes, that's a great idea. I'm like, yeah. So that's like a great example of just like an old school idea of like a limited edition colorway drop mixed, because he's not concerned with go-to-market strategy or how do you do drop cadences. He's concerned with the engineering of how to make a shoe in this new way. So I think it's the mix of like traditional ideas and his ideas.
But I would also add, so when I started Zellerfeld, it started out of frustration, right? So I'm a sneakerhead. I also collected all of my different Nikes. However, all that storytelling is gone, and why I love and why I would would give everything to work with a guy like Jeff is because what actually made footwear great is storytelling, is great product, is all of that. And to me, I just I love being able to now bring out new storytelling. I love the Kung Shu video we did, like all of that stuff. That is what gets people excited. That gets me excited, and this is why I hope 3D printing will do its job of getting it back by leveling the playing field.
And I think the one thing that I agree there with was like the speed in which we can do things with Zellerfeld is crazy. So like the shoe, in terms of what we've done, the speed is amazing, but also the promotion that we did. I mean, maybe we should show...
We got to show the video.
We got to show the video that we made to promote this shoe for ComplexCon Hong Kong. And the idea, shout out to Toby, who I think is he in the room, Toby? Yes. The idea of like Kung Fu, which is like the art of martial arts, but in Kung Fu, they're always showing people kick, so you're always seeing the sneaker. And then he said, let's do the art of Kung Shu. And I was like, that's freaking genius. That was like 2 weeks ago when he had this conversation with me. I'm not exaggerating. That was like 2 weeks ago. And then let's play the piece now that we made.
I think I didn't press the button quite fast enough here.
Nothing short.
Oh, here we go.
Let's turn the volume up.
So we saved ourselves a lot of costs and refined this fine martial art for our own purpose. Introducing Kung Shu, the martial art of presenting footwear.
辉哥大师，
你涼咗腳未？
是的，師傅，我按指示做了。
鞋肉合腳，何須鞋帶？ Confucius 話有膠水個位係弱點。
Yup.
痛係成功個關鍵。
功夫練習進步好唔好？
佢行到成鴨咁，但係你放心，一對鞋1萬個氣尖，如你行運。佢會將你對鞋發揚光大。
你要對佢嚴格啲。
徒弟，你已經精通咗功夫個絕技，你而家學滿師。
你係我哋隊員之一。
是。
If you think you're worthy, scan your feet.
Props.
And the shoe is called the Staple Zellerfeld Sapiens shoe.
The style name is called Sapiens.
Where did we get that from?
Sapiens actually is a byproduct of our NFT Web3 community. So people who are members of that were called Sapiens. So we adapted that name. This project actually came out of that NFT project, and it actually outlasted the concept of NFTs. So it's almost like an homage to that community.
And why does it look like this? How did we arrive at this shape initially? Or did the shape not look like this initially?
If you go to the next slide, actually. Yeah, so you'll see that there are many different iterations of these shoes. It's funny, we probably should have went with this one. It would have done really well. This one looks like the Mastro, sort of like Speed Cat vibe. But this was done years ago, before the comeback, you know. But this one probably would have hit really hard. But the beautiful thing is we could just do it now, you know. But I wanted something that looked prehistoric and futuristic at the same time. So this was inspired by like your vertebrae and your rib cage. And then there's something about like sort of this dinosaur foot, elephant foot kind of vibe too. So I just wanted something like that looked like an archaeologist pulled it out, but like 100 years from now, but then it's like 3D printed, you know?
It feels very like Super Metroid, like the aliens you would find on a different planet when you
Yeah.
landed there.
Yeah.
Like the fossils of them, though.
And also because you couldn't really make a shape like this using leather and nubuck. You know, you'd have to have, like, how would you make this in leather and nubuck? You know what I mean? So, like, we wanted to do something that you could only do 3D printed.
Was it hard to make this, or is this still a shape like where you just give the machines the model and they know how to print it?
Part of what took also quite some time was actually figuring out how to make like a shape like this doable. So for example, like when we talked earlier, you said, okay, those feel actually much better than all the other printed shoes that you tested from us. And I believe there came lots of engineering, for example, which I love and what I appreciate, like all those different pods that they don't feel uncomfortable while walking. Like there were actually lots of engineering involved to make that shoe feel like a standard shoe and like a comfortable shoe. So that was definitely part of it, all the engineering behind it. Yeah.
And is there wear testing that goes into these shoes? What does that look like?
If you go to the next slide, this is the wear testing. So what we did in our booth, we actually showed all of these like wear test photos. We actually showed the screenshots of our WhatsApp conversations that we had.
Edited screenshots, not the unredacted versions.
Yeah, exactly. The uncensored ones. But yeah, you could see all the different wear testing and all the issues that we had. I got to visit the Hamburg factory as well. And this whole collaboration was pretty much done on WhatsApp, which is really beautiful too. Yeah, I mean, there was, I would say, a good year of wear testing, you know?
And what things are we fine-tuning in that process? What were the failures early on that we had to fix?
I would say fit, obviously, like just looseness or tightness, overly loose or tight. What I found most interesting about 3D printed shoes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cornelius, but there is like a variation that occurs. Like even after we thought we perfected it, you would say, "Oh no, there's a failure happening." So it's not like once you get it forever. It's like you still have to monitor the quality each time. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, and it's also, feet are very different. So I don't know, maybe I have some issues or someone else has an issue that we didn't think of before.
You don't want to see my feet, believe me. You gotta pay for that anyway. So
I'm very excited to make you custom fitted shoes, but nonetheless, I really believe there's lots of stuff happening where also the thinking needs to change in footwear, where this, like I said as the beginning statement, this is much like software. It's very iterative. It's like, okay, here's an update and here's an update. As soon as we figure out something out, we don't have any tooling where we invested $500,000 into. It's like, if we figure out that's wrong, let's fix it and let's have almost like a bug patch to it. And that's what I love, where I also, like every single iteration that you received, Jeff, felt probably completely different. Like I remember the very first versions I couldn't wear because the heel was too stiff.
Yep.
So we figured out, okay, like it's basically cutting into the Achilles, so let's make that softer.
Mm-hmm.
And like all of that, I think that's the beautiful piece of it, where I hope people see products, and footwear is a really great transition product, but in general, products more like, okay, there can be lots of change happening and improvements happening as the product is rolled out as well.
It's much closer to app development than it is to footwear development. And I'm still programmed as a footwear developer, where like if there's a problem, like we won't fix it until the next 2 years.
right, you gotta send it back to the factory, and they gotta make new samples.
Like for example, if they make the Air Jordan 38 and they figure out there's an issue with it, they're not making the Air Jordan 38.1. It's not going to get addressed until the 39 comes, right? But you have to think about it now more as a software developer, where if there's a glitch on your Apple Photos app, they can push out an update and just like the next day you can get an improvement. So it's more like that thinking, which is like, it's still hard for me to remember that this is not footwear, it's software in the shape of footwear, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What is the biggest change you saw, I guess, in working with someone like Zellerfeld, who has this futuristic look or this totally different way of manufacturing footwear versus all the projects you've done with, let's say, more traditional footwear brands, all the big brands that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is just last week we released a sneaker with Brooks, which is like one of the oldest footwear brands in the world, 125 years old, and they've never done a collaboration lifestyle shoe before, right? So we were literally working with like the oldest, most traditional, and then the newest. And the biggest difference I can see that I still get like sort of not used to is the fact that there's no minimums. You don't have to think about an order allocation. You don't have to think about overstock and what to do with that.
I just don't know how familiar everybody is with how exactly this model works. So like we gotta break it down.
So when you do a normal sneaker, you have to, first of all, it's usually the most minimum you can make is 500 to 1,000 pairs. And that's already super minimum. Usually it's more like 3,000 to 5,000 pairs of shoes is the minimum run, right? So you have to be able to sell all of those, and hopefully you do. But if you don't sell through all those 3,000 pairs, then you got to figure out, do you put them on sale? Do you throw them away? Do you give them away? Whatever.
Burn them.
Yeah, burn them, you know. So that's like, and then forget about the brand logistics of that. There's also the environmental aspect of that too, right? You're got to make all these shoes. The mold, you talked about the molds and the labor involved. Like there's no hands that touch these shoes when they're being made. It's all machined, right? So it's just a totally wild, different way of thinking where now it's like, wow, I don't have to think of these minimums. I don't have to think about overstock, putting them on sale. I don't have to think about the manpower. It's really like the difference between maybe like driving a car and a self-driving car. It's like a totally different way of thinking. I don't know. It's so revolutionary that it's hard to even find a comparison for it, you know?
And now, as a sneakerhead, like when you really think this through, there are no minimums. Like that is basically the main effort and goal of Zellerfeld, that launching a shoe has $0 upfront investment. Because all of a sudden, what that will do is basically, Jeff, whenever he has an idea, he doesn't necessarily, there's no commercial pressure in it. So you can do whatever the fuck you want, and if you love it, chances are really high consumers and us love it. So what we are trying to shape here, where we see our purpose in is really having those upfronts as low as possible, because then hopefully the great stories can emerge again.
So that's the part that I'm most not used to. I'm still trained to think when I have a great idea, let me make sure I can hit the minimums. Let me make sure
Will
it'll work
1,000 people buy this?
Yeah. And let me plan for fall, winter 27, because that's when I think a shoe needs to come out. You know, so I was talking about it with a kid. I was telling him about Zellerfeld, and he was loving the shoe, and he's a designer. And I said, you could upload a design, and they can make it. And he was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, no, for real. You can upload a design. You can make it. He was like a young kid. He didn't have like a big Instagram following. And he's like, yeah, one day. I'm like, no, not one day.
Today.
Tonight.
Yeah.
You could just
Saturday.
But he still, I could tell he didn't understand what I was talking about. You know, like I could make my own shoe. What are you talking about, you know?
So if I uploaded my design right now on stage, when could I have the printed physical shoe on my feet?
So usually in traditional footwear manufacturing, that takes months often. In our case, it takes 2 weeks, and it costs around $200, $235, which is in Zellerfeld production the fast lane, basically, for like samples and stuff like this, because we want to help actually creators create new shoes. But like 2 weeks is unheard of. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Amrit often tells it the footwear's biggest kept secret, and it's really true. Like if you are a brand and you want to launch a shoe, or like if you want to do quick iterations, the best place to go is Zellerfeld. It's the cheapest, it's the quickest, it's the best, it's all of it. And I'm really excited over the next years to see how people are actually realizing, wow, that is the biggest game changer in footwear development.
Like, okay, Brendan Dunne, right? You can make a Brendan Dunne sneaker. He just said it in 2 weeks, right? Now, if
I could sell 17 pairs at least.
But if
how many people are in this audience? Maybe a third of them for me. I could sell 17 pairs.
Yeah, no, you could. But let's say Adi came to you, right? No joke, and said like, we want to do a Brendan Dunne sneaker. It'll come out. What are we at? We're at March 2025 right now. It would come out December 2026, right? You would now be like, okay, let me think about it. Let me think about this design, right? Project it out. But I could tell the look in your face when he said you could have a sneaker in 2 weeks. Yeah. It's kind of paralyzing, right? It's like too fast. Right? You're like, I could see you'd be like, I can't think of something in 2 weeks yet. So that's how I feel too. Like it's kind of the speed is paralyzing, and it's almost like the creative community needs to catch up with the idea that you can now make shoes like this.
There's a whole different set of tools.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also I want you to know that right now 2 weeks sounds incredibly fast. To us, this is what we are challenging ourselves against. Like we want 1 day. We want the same day. So that, I don't know, there's like a big event on social media happening. You can put out a shoe building on that momentum.
A shoe based on the meme that I saw on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cornelius, I wanted to ask you, because you've worked with a lot of partners, it's very central to the nature of Zellerfeld, this kind of open source production and collaboration. But in working with Jeff, kind of the flip side of the question I asked him, how different has that been versus the other partners you've worked with in making shoes and bringing shoes to market?
So when we work with bigger brands, often the difference, like when we talk about, I don't know, Jeff said 2 weeks ago, we said, okay, let's use Kung Fu and make Kung Shu. Stuff like that would take months of approval process, and then it would be shut down. So like this is, and it's the same not only in storytelling, it's the same with the design, it's the same, like, I'm pretty sure a big brand would have not taken, I adore this design, I really love this design, but to the point also, when there's commercial pressure, you also need to make more commercially like shoes that are expected, which in the end is the main reason why the shoes look boring. So there are like all those steps in the chain when you work with a big brand, and every step has probably a high chance of someone wants to kick an idea out. Whereas Jeff and us was like, Toby was like, do you like Kung Shu? Jeff was, I fucking love Kung Shu. Let's do it. Are you kidding me? Are you actually pranking me? And
I said that. I said that on a call.
Yeah.
I said, am I being punked right now with this idea?
I love that because like I fully like this is what I with all of my heart believe in. If guys like Jeff love what they are doing, consumers will love what Jeff is doing. And this is why then it will sell well. And I would say that is the biggest turnaround what we are trying to create is that we want to enable people to make shoes that they love again. And I sometimes feel when you are a really great designer working at like a big brand, often you have a hard time. You have an amazing Instagram channel where you are like where you unleash all of your creativity, but for us as consumers, it's really hard to get it because in that chain, so many people shoot it down, and this is why I love Zellerfeld because it's like all of those people, like a community, and everybody is like. It's not really like this in German we say this elbow culture where everybody is like really like trying to be in front. It's very unifying, and everybody wants that everybody else is doing well because then that means better tools, more creative freedom, and this is why I love like what I love fighting for.
You're talking a lot about the speed and the freedom at which you can create these things, but are these things ever bad? Is it ever a hindrance to have something that can be just made immediately like that? Like you miss a lot of steps, right? You could be sacrificing something in how much you're testing it or how many people got the chance to revise it. Like is that ever a bad thing, do you think?
Yes. I see it in two ways. In one way, when we started, nobody would ever think of a design like the Sapiens, in a sense of everybody in the early days was, can you print me an Air Force One? Can you print me like the traditional silhouette? Nobody.
People literally just wanted you to print a bootleg Air Force One?
Yeah.
Yes, because you know.
Did you? Maybe.
We did one version that was
Allegedly.
not sold, and but really.
Never again.
What I. Who knows? What I really want to emphasize though is over the time. However, in the early days, I was furious. People say about creators saying, "Print me an Air Force One bootleg."
Because they just totally missed the point.
Yeah, I was like, you have all the tools in the world. Why do you want to print a shoe that already exists? But the more I like you saw the Nike stuff that we did with Nike and like all of that stuff, and I found it also interesting when you like I read in an article about the early days of television, and the early days of television when television was invented, that was a real realization moment for me. It was what people didn't know what to do with this new medium, with this new format. So what they were doing was they were filming radio shows. So much like a podcast these days, that is what they did because they first had to invent movies. They first had to invent sitcoms. And that filmed radio shows was the first steps towards like people accepting that medium, what they already know. So when I saw like I don't know, we see also traditional designs on Zellerfeld doing really well these days, and I believe it's really a transformation that also probably needs to happen in society over the next 20 years or so to also accept new silhouettes. But what I love is that we don't know what silhouettes will come out. We don't know what the movie equivalent will be, what the sitcom equivalent will be in footwear. And I believe that's why this is the most exciting time in footwear. Footwear hasn't much changed since 2,000 years. But now it's actually the first time where it's really this sense of movement, and it's really great momentum.
I mean, the best example of that in recent times is when the iPhone first came out. people had those accessories that was the BlackBerry keyboard that you attach to your iPhone. Like they were like, how could you get rid of the keyboard on the BlackBerry? So we're gonna make this attachment. So we're at that stage now in 3D printed shoes where like the technology just came out, it just got good enough, but they still want to like see the Air Force One first, you know? So like we need a little bit of time. But wait, I want to ask Cornelius a question. When the Nike Air Max 1000 thing happened, how validating or how did you feel when you finally were asked by like the big machine to be like, all right, can you 3D print us a Nike now? That must have felt amazing.
It felt amazing, especially since it came after Louis Vuitton. And with Louis Vuitton, everybody was like, yeah, great, 3D printed shoes, they will be expensive, they are not accessible. But with Nike, to us, it was really important. Nike is the brand on earth that pushes out millions of pairs of shoes each day. It's when you are actually, we are always talking about printed shoes on every foot. If you're serious about it, you have to work with Nike. And this is why we were like so excited, because for the first time people realized this is not just a gimmick. This is not just some fancy stuff up there for only a very few people. We are serious about getting printed shoes on every foot. So all of a sudden everybody reached out and like I loved, like a couple of days after, I was in LA meeting a couple of other brands as well, and everybody was like, oh my God, I just realized I knew you guys for 3 or 4 years now, but you guys are actually unstoppable. And I think that was the best feeling that I ever had over the last 7 or 8 years when I started in my student dorm. Like the feeling that people now think Zellerfeld is unstoppable and we actually will get printed shoes on every foot. Like that is, I would say, the best feeling I ever felt in my life.
So how hard was it to work with them in terms of putting your processes together? Because again, just going back to this thing of them being, in a way, even though they'll use the word innovation a lot, so traditional in what we're talking about, traditional footwear production, but you being kind of in opposition to that, I think, was it hard to bring those two units together?
I think it's great that we work with the innovation department, so they're really open for new things. I think they also want to work with us. I think in general brands want to work with us to teach them also about like, I think there's lots of value in just having people, like bringing people inside that tell them, okay, there's also a different way. And especially the innovation department is really open. So when it comes to like fully printed shoes, sure, right now there's still an air bubble in it, in the Air Max 1000, but they're really open, and I can't wait to see. I hope people and brands will realize there's actually more innovation that can happen. Like, for example, what about a fully printed like air bubble, so to speak, you know? Like how would an like compressed air bubble look like?
Are you printing air bubbles? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything, but that is what like stuff like that is, I believe, the consumer wants to see. And me representing Zellerfeld, I want to see that brands realize, okay, an air bubble is really nice, but also how does the air concept look in the future? Like when on every foot there is a printed shoe, what are the new technologies that will be powered by 3D printing? Is there a new lacing mechanism? I loved back in the 90s when there was like stuff like Instapump. There was like
BOA lacing.
All that shit. That was cool. And like seeing people trying out new things. Like maybe there is a cool new outsole technology that you can do by having like a really nice, crazy outsole pattern. Like I think we need to push brands. Zellerfeld's purpose is also to push brands to think, okay, what will be the tech differentiator in the future?
I still think it's wild every time I tie shoelaces that in all of humanity and innovation, that strings on our shoes is still the de facto go-to way of fastening your shoes. Like every time I tie my shoes, I'm like, this is the best we could do, strings.
And you just feel like you're wasting your time.
Well, I know we tried Velcro and we tried BOA and we tried all these other
Marty
things.
McFly.
Yeah, self-lacing, but it's like, no, we're still gonna go back to like dental floss.
And what I find most fascinating is, you would think that shoes got better over time, right? But actually, like I was just talking with someone, with Harry, that it's really when I ask my parents, or like when you ask the older generation, they don't know just their shoe size, they also know their shoe width. And nowadays, in my generation, people don't know their shoe width anymore. So, and the main reason is because for ease of logistics, because like you didn't have just 12 different sizes or 14 different sizes, you had like, I don't know, 40 different versions that you had to stock, that where you then have minimum order quantities and all of that stuff. It got so complex that they cut out all the different widths. So now all people have to wear the same shoes.
You're saying people don't realize it, but the actual differentiation we can get in our shoes is a lot less than it used to be on average.
Shoes got worse.
Yeah.
So how can we accept that fact when you love shoes that you see the industry going like towards the wrong direction?
Yeah. Jeff, one of the things I liked in your notes from this WhatsApp conversation that takes a bunch of pieces from the process is there's one piece of feedback where you said, oh, this one feels 100 times better than the last sample. Do you remember what that was in response to specifically? And Cornelius, do you remember what was changed that made the shoe feel so much better for Jeff? Do you remember what that was about specifically?
It was the feel, but one of the weirdest things about working with Zellerfeld is that not only am I trying to iterate and improve on this thing, but his technology is actually advancing almost faster than the sampling. You know what I mean? Like, I'd get a shoe and I'd be like, oh, this feels a lot better. And you'd be like, yeah, because we changed the entire way we're like doing it now. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's why. You know, so it's a bit like surfing, where you're trying to learn how to surf, but the substrate, meaning the water, is constantly changing. So it's like I'm trying to figure out how to improve this thing while the whole mechanism of how 3D printed shoes are being made is also constantly evolving, you know? So that was like the wildest thing to me.
Which is also on our end an issue, because when we think of Jeff giving another sample, we already know what's going to happen next week and the week after. So we are always trying to postpone the prints a little bit because, oh man, it would be cool if Jeff even like can feel even this and can feel even the next feature and stuff like that. But yeah, this is also why I believe we could have given you way more samples, but then like with way more individual steps. But we were always like, man, Jeff needs to feel this improvement.
Yeah.
And this is why we often then had to batch process. But I also believe, I think that's always in the early days like this, right? The early days of computer, there were like lots of moving parts. Now with AI moving in, both in design, but also in like us tuning settings. We often use AI now as well to tune settings. I think, or I hope, probably it's a false hope. I hope that this will get at some point a foundation where there are not so many changes anymore. It might also happen the other way around, that actually changes are happening even faster. But I really hope that we are doing the foundational work and then it's like nuances at some point. Because I would say the shoes are already really great. They are still monocolor and stuff like this. Stuff like that will change. Even multi-material, you could say. But I would say already those shoes are really, really, really great.
Can we return to the timing aspect of it real quick, just like the speed or like, so I know it's not as simple as you just pressing Command P on a computer, but like from when you initiate printing to when the shoe can be put on my foot, like how long is that total?
So right now it can be those 20 hours that we said in the beginning, and mostly it's you pressing like the checkout button on the website. Then automatically, or like you will be sent a link to scan your feet. You scan your feet with 2 pictures. You can do that at home, and we then know like all sorts of different foot measurements, like forefoot width, heel width, different girth measurements, and like on the instep and stuff like this. And then all of that is just numbers, right? Like the fit on the Sapiens is just numbers. So if you have, I don't know, a very high instep of 260 millimeters, for example, then it's just in the 3D room, in the 3D space, just pulling the different parts up, but that takes seconds. So you pushing a button and like sending us the scan, like theoretically, if a printer is ready, like after 20 hours, there's a custom fitted shoe. And what I love about this is that, like we say it in the video, only shoes that don't fit need laces. So you see no laces on those because they will fit you.
Yeah.
And there are also pictures, like you can find them online, of different versions of shoes, how they look when you have a high instep and a low instep and stuff. It's incredible. And you will realize, okay, this will actually change the game. But long story short, sorry to take that long road there. Like it's basically 20 hours right now, but hopefully soon, like I would dream of a same-day delivery.
So wait, you ever order a pizza on Domino's? And when you order it, it tells you like we're preparing it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
It's coming to you. It's on a bike, and it shows you the progression of how your pizza's coming. When you make a shoe on Zellerfeld, you see that top photo there, that upper right one where I'm looking at a TV screen, and if you look closely, there's like green bars and yellow bars and red bars. So when you hit checkout now on Zellerfeld, your order shows up on that screen, right? And it'll be green, and it shows you the progression. That's how they're making shoes. It's like, it just immediately shows up in the process. And then the actual printing of it takes 20 hours. But I was like fascinated when I saw that. You just see orders coming in. Like, there's no footwear factory in the world where John Smith ordered this shoe and it's showing up and it's being made. I was just like, holy shit, this is crazy to see this.
Yeah, like the closest thing we have to that is something like Nike ID, which is never going to show you that granular level of detail.
Right.
Of what's actually being produced or where in the process it is. One of the things I want to ask too, just the Zellerfeld model in general, like it seems very, we're talking about the website, we're talking about how you order the shoes online, you see the progress tracker. Can I buy these anywhere in person? Do you ever want to be someone who's stocked at retail? Is that counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve? Do you want to be on store shelves?
So we want to be on every foot. And so far, we were very limited by capacity, but now we are scaling from 200 to 2,000 printers, which will roughly give us like a couple of thousand pairs a day soon, and that means we can be more open to trying out new concepts. And I think like on the booth, again, like Jeff said it in the beginning, if you haven't seen it yet, you should check it out, because what I love seeing is we are putting hundreds of people, almost 1,000 people a day into printed shoes for the first time. You ask anyone, have you ever worn printed shoes? Almost everyone says no. And I think that is so important for the adoption, because if you haven't felt it, how great they are, I believe there's still a little bit of trust issue. But if you put them on your foot and you realize, okay, I can actually do the staple walk, and like it's actually comfortable, I think that will be a massive driver for adoption. So whatever we can do to be closer to people, may it be in storefronts, maybe at 21 Mercer or wherever, like I think that is important for the mission of putting printed shoes on every foot.
21 Mercer, is that right? I'll be at the lineup.
Isn't that ironic in a way where like 21 Mercer used to represent the most innovative and pinnacle level of product for a big brand.
Yeah, Nike store there.
Yeah, and now I think like, you know, we're going to have Zellerfeld at 21 Mercer. So for the ability of people to go into this historic address and now see, feel, and witness the most pinnacle aspect of footwear today, I think it's pretty full circle.
It's like the next step in the timeline.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to ask you guys. I know this isn't performance footwear per se, but like, how should I be wear testing these? Like, what types of activities should I be doing in these shoes to make sure I'm getting the fullest use of them? Do I have to go practice Kung Fu in the mountains?
I think you definitely need to practice Konshu and post it on Instagram. Otherwise, I think wearing them all day. I mean, like that is probably for what we are doing right now. We are still not in performance footwear. I badly want to get into performance footwear because custom fit and like all of that stuff. Obviously, I really believe there will be soon like Olympics won in printed shoes. But I think just wearing them all day is the best thing that you can do to test them.
All right. I think we have some time for audience questions if anybody has any questions. I don't know if someone has a microphone to pass around, perhaps. This gentleman does here. Yeah, here we go.
Hey. I want to take the television example. Like, back then we had 5 media companies that decided what we watched. and then YouTube came along, and you have millions of people could go on YouTube and create their content. People could consume it. What's the future look like? Will you just have millions of people creating shoe designs, and people could just go on and find whatever they like and buy that, and then you don't need 5 big shoe companies deciding what everyone wears?
Yeah, I think the consumer will decide. So, and I think it will get very fragmented. A new long tail market will open up, which doesn't necessarily mean that it will be like I still believe the big brands will do really well in that day and age, much like Michael just joined us from Spotify, for example, and there's also, you know, now consumers spend way more on music than they did before streaming, and now those big record labels actually like do better than they did before streaming, although in the early days they were really scared of it. And so what I love is that it's not just like opening up the market for anyone. I believe it will be millions of designs and millions of creators, like there are millions of different apps on the App Store right now. It's not only opening it up, it's also, I really hope that we are building a world here in which the best product wins, in which the best storytelling wins. And that can either be a big brand or it can be a nobody. So I always say, or we internally at Zellerfeld are always saying, we are wondering who will be that Mr. Beast. I adore like Mr. Beast for the fact that he's now like competing with Disney. Although he was like a couple of years ago, you still find those videos where he is happy about 7 subscribers. And I believe that that will free up the industry, what we badly need. And this is why I believe there will be lots of newcomers, which is really exciting. But with that level playing field, I think it will be a world in which consumers win, in which they will get the best product, in which they will get the best storytelling. And that's also ultimately why we at Zellerfeld are building it for. Because, to be honest, we are also building a product that we really want to adore, which is kind of hard right now in footwear.
Thanks.
What's the most challenging part about sneaker designing, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I don't think you're not sneaker designing. That's the
No,
thing.
yeah.
They're not sneaker designing. That's what's cool, I think, right?
Yeah, so we are very focused on the tech and on building tools that make it easier to design. Like, I don't know, we have automatic checks. You upload a 3D model. We always say we want to be a little bit like YouTube, where you just upload a video and then you can launch it. It's still not fully as easy, but that's the vision. But we are really investing heavily in building the tools so that you upload a shoe design and you will get within seconds feedback. Okay, the sole thickness is like maybe too low or too high, it would break maybe. Or the upper thickness is too thin, it would not print nicely. And all of that stuff, or I don't know, like the ankle cuts are not cut out well, so it might cut into your ankles. Stuff that we can, with an engineering mind, can actually figure out. Then we are trying to build rules that we can put into software. But like to Jeff's point, probably that's a question much better suited for Jeff. Like we are not designers.
When I went to visit the facility in Hamburg, Germany, one of the most eye-opening things that I saw is that, like, when you think about 3D printed anything, you think about this like box that has that nozzle, right? So you just imagine, oh, the leader in that must have like the most number of boxes printing. What really shocked me was that Zellerfeld is actually building the box from scratch. And I think I went into a room that I wasn't supposed to go into when I was at their headquarters, where even the motherboard, right, like the circuitry had Zellerfeld logos on them, which I was like, wait a second, you're making the motherboard? Like you're making the chips to make the 3D printing? And then I remember I was like, can I take a picture of this? And you're like, no, you cannot take a picture of it. But that's how deep down into the DNA of shoemaking, they're re-engineering this. It's not just like, let's buy a bunch of spool and a bunch of like printer heads and make a bunch of shoes. It's like they're really redefining it from the ground up.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
You were actually, if I'm not mistaken, even when you transport like parts of the 3D printed shoes from one room to another, you were using these trays on carts, I think you told me even the trays, the transport trays, were engineered by you guys. Like you couldn't buy.
This sounds like
stock,
Lumen. This sounds like Severance.
You couldn't buy stock U-line trays. You had to make your own transport trays.
There are lots of things that we have to reinvent, like process-wise as well. Usually in footwear production.
You could have bought the trays.
Oh no, it's not efficient enough.
So like process-wise, usually in footwear manufacturing, you have like one pile of US 9s, one pile of US 10s. Like you batch produce. But in our case, every shoe has a name tag on it, or is identifiable to one customer. And then since we print the shoes individually, so maybe you have on the one side of the hall, you have the left shoe of that customer. On the other side, you have the right shoe. At some point, like you have to build the processes to merge them, and all of that stuff. That is why it took so long. But now we're here. Now we are ready to scale, and we are here on the offense. All that spirit that we had to, over the last 7 years, we had to reinvent the wheel. But now we are on the offense. Like you will see us. You will see us everywhere in the next years, and we are like. I hope you will realize how serious we are about printed shoes. And the sooner you try them, the sooner you will realize that this is actually the future. So please go ahead, have a look at the booth. I think that's really great.
Thank you for. I mean, it's just mind-blowing conversation, right? I mean, kind of new and the old, and thank you, Brendan, for moderating in such a great way. So I'm really fascinated by what were you proposing to do, and I think like any old traditional industry, it needs to be pulled into the present and into the future, which I think is what you're doing. But and all these plans and designs are really ambitious and amazing. What would you do, or do you have any thoughts about still appealing to old shoe heads like me, who might still struggle a little bit? I mean, I'm all on board with the conversations. I'm all on board with where you're coming from, technology versus design. But some people still like AJ1s. Some people still like to lace up some shoes. So is there a compromise here, or slow evolution to pull us guys over? Or is it like you're going to come for the ride, or you're going to be left behind? What's the kind of thinking that you guys have for this?
I think if you are a smart businessman, you will figure out traditional looking designs and put them on Zellerfeld.
They'll print an Air Force One for you, is what he's saying.
So I think there is, like, to your point, the best thing that you can do is, like, as a consumer, kind of demand that maybe. And like, if there is something that everyone here can do to actually like push us more into that future, is like buy a pair of printed shoes, because that shows a consumer decision. And the more consumers, and like the earlier you switch to that, the more power will behind this revolution. And I think that is like at Zellerfeld, like we pay really low salaries. Like I still live in a student dorm, and like we fully I wake up so early in the morning. Everything like we have at Zellerfeld, everyone that is there, they are pouring their life and purpose into this. And I believe if you want more traditional looking designs, I think it's buy the most traditional looking design on Zellerfeld right now. If you want something crazy, like I'm more a guy that you can probably see on my outfit, I like to go wild. So I buy the wildest shoes. And I believe then it will be a really fair marketplace, so to speak, where you can just like buy whatever you want. And I think that will be a really nice trigger, like Adam Smith said, like the invisible hand in economics, which will guide the market towards what you want.
I mean, I personally think, like, I was one of the last holdouts on streaming music. I was like, take my CDs to the grave with me. I was not doing it. Obviously now, are you on Spotify or Apple Music? Yeah, so eventually you're going to transition over. It depends on how long. Now, even though I'm fully into streaming music now, I still have my vinyl records and I still have my record player, and it's like a nostalgic thing to have that. And I do firmly believe, even me, who comes from like an older generation, I do think within our lifetime, for sure, I would be willing to make this bet with anyone that you'll be walking into a Foot Locker. I've been saying this, by the way, for like 10 fucking years now, that within our generation, you will walk into a sneaker store in a shopping mall in the middle of America. That sneaker store will have no inventory. You will scan your feet, you will pick your shoe, you'll go get a cup of coffee, and when you come back, the shoe will be done. I personally think that has to be the way we go, not even because we want it or don't want it, because the earth and the environment will demand that. Like, I think it'll be illegal to make 10,000 shoes and just have them sit in a warehouse. It'll be like the tobacco industry. It'll be like high fructose corn syrup sugars, where like, if you want to drink a soda, we're gonna tax the shit out of you for that. I personally think the environmental issues is gonna force us to do that anyway, notwithstanding. But because of that, someone will be holding on to a pair of Chuck Taylors in their bedroom and caressing it like we do a Stevie Wonder album right now. Like, I remember these days, you'll like smell, I'll pull out a Stevie Wonder album and I'll like literally smell it because I miss that authenticity. We're gonna do that with Converse Chuck Taylors one day, but 99% of the rest of our footwear will be printed on demand whenever we want it. In fact, it may even get to a point, I'm picturing this, Cornelius, you're gonna wear a pair of 3D printed shoes for the day, come home, toss them into a regrinding thing, and in the morning, like a fresh pair will come out. Every day you'll be able to...
The ultimate insurance for always fresh kicks.
Yes. Mark my words.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Gentlemen, thank you both. Thank you everybody
too.
for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Please come by the booth. Which
Yes.
booth? What's the booth number?
I don't know. Do you know the booth number?
I actually don't.
C6.
It's over there, way on the end.
Yes, we'll see you there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone.